Welcome to The City Considers. I'm Autumn Labbé-Renault. This is a program where we take a look at some of the people and programs in Davis, California. And you can catch the archives of this, past shows and present on Comcast Channel 15 in Davis and on our YouTube channel. Joining me today is Donna Neville, who was elected to the Davis City Council during a special election in June 2023. She brought to the position years of experience providing legislative counsel on policy issues, including environmental and K through 12 education. And she served as chief counsel to the California State Auditor, where she played a pivotal role in a program geared at detection and intervention around financial vulnerabilities in California cities. She also served on the team that developed the application and selection process for serving on the California Citizens Redistricting Commission. And in 2008 and 2009, she was appointed by the former governor to serve as chief counsel to the State Board of Education. Donna also served locally as City of Davis Planning Commission Chair, chaired the city's Budget and Finance Commission and DJUSD's Measure M Oversight Committee, and she is the immediate past board president for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Yolo County, also known as NAMI. Donna, that's quite a storied resume. Welcome, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Autumn. It's so great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks. Let's start a little bit by talking about your district, District 3. So just as a reminder, the city began its transition to district elections in November 2020 and completed the full transition 2 years later in 2022. And you ran to replace the seat vacated by Lucas Frericks when he was elected to the Yolo County Board of Supervisors. Can you tell us a bit about District 3 and what others have described to me as the push-pull of both advocating for a district while also needing to serve the needs of the community as a whole?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You know, when I was running for office last year, I would say that almost everyone I encountered expressed a dislike for district elections. And all of them pretty much gave as their reason the fact that they don't get to choose everyone on council. They only get to choose the person who represents the district where they live, and that they felt that that really left them out of things, and they didn't like it very much. Since being in office, I have somewhat mixed feelings about the district approach. On one hand, I think it's actually really, really helpful for those who live in my district, in District 3, to reach out to me. And I work really closely with them. In fact, one of the things I've done since getting elected is to really work hard, to be out in the community, to be responsive to community concerns and to address them. And I think people really like that. They like the fact that they have a point person on council they can go to and get resolution of their concerns. But at the same time, what it also makes me realize is that as a council member, I represent the whole city. And so I'm not always hearing as much from constituents in other parts of the city. And I'm sure my colleagues are. I'm sure my 4 colleagues have exactly the same experiences where those who live in their districts reach out to them and they work to resolve issues. But I don't know what all of those are. So unfortunately, I have to work harder to be sure I know what all the issues are facing the whole city. So that's just my reaction after having been, in service under districts. My district is also really interesting. As you know, it encompasses all of the downtown. And I think everyone on city council would tell you that what happens downtown affects the entire city. And yet it's in District 3. So all of the downtown and a lot of other areas in my district are also of great interest to the city. As you know, the Respite Center on L Street is in my district. Paul's Place is in this district. One of the largest development proposals that's now undergoing environmental review is in my district. So there's a lot happening right now in District 3, which arguably impacts the whole city. And so that's kind of the push pull, for me is as a council member, I absolutely serve the whole city. There's no question in my mind, but I do find that the constituents in District 3 are much more inclined to reach out to me personally to ask for resolution on an issue. And I did in the past, maybe they reached out to all 5 council members. I'm not sure. So
Right. Well, since you mentioned the respite center, let's have a conversation about the kind of stakeholder involvement and what's coming up around that. In full transparency, I run Davis Media Access, which is located on Fifth Street and just around the corner from the respite center. And Donna, that's how I first reached out to you, was to connect around some of the problems that we were experiencing with theft and vandalism and some other issues. And I want to note that you have been very responsive to that, and thank you. So we have for those who may not know, we're talking about a respite center for the unhoused, and it's located on L Street, kind of at the end of the alley that comes out from in back of the city courtyard. So it is in the what's called the Davis Manor neighborhood. Um, and let's start at the beginning. What was the impetus of locating the center there? And my understanding, it was originally a pilot project, and at some point it was decided that it was no longer a pilot. In other words, that was going to be its permanent location. But if you could give us a little bit of the history around that, and then we can talk about some of the community engagement opportunities coming up.
Sure, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. When the respite center was first proposed, it was characterized as a pilot. There was this recognized need that we needed to have some kind of a daytime respite center in the city. To be honest, the folks on council at the time weren't sure how successful it would be or what it would really entail to keep it operational and to keep it well managed. And so it was at that point, it was described as a pilot. Let's start this, let's work hard to make it successful, evaluate it, and see where we go. The original proposed location was not where it is now at that near that intersection of Fifth and L. There was a different proposed location. And I have to admit, I was not on council, and I don't
Mhm.
I wasn't at some of the meetings when this was discussed back in 2018-19, but my understanding is there was very significant community opposition to the first location. And then the city kind of went back to the drawing board and came up with this other alternative, which is basically city property that is essentially adjacent to and sort of a part of the city's corporate yard. And
Mhm.
they proposed that. And just in full disclosure and honesty, I think that happened, that switch to a new location happened without a lot of community engagement or
Mhm.
discussion or notice. And so it did cause at the time some pretty significant community concern, largely because people felt like it just happened very suddenly and they hadn't been consulted. They didn't really know that this was a plan, and suddenly council was taking it up. So that's sort of what happened when it was first set up. And to go back to your point about it being a pilot versus more permanent, um, there was really I've had to do a little bit of research myself to kind of dig back and see who said what and what happened at what point in time. And there was never really a concrete moment in time where city council said, it's no longer a pilot, it's now permanent. Instead, what happened was that COVID hit, for one thing, and the respite center was considered to be a very valuable service, especially during those early days of COVID when it really helped to get people tested and other things. And what happened was that over time, council, and I wasn't yet on council, but council realized it was serving a lot of people. It was providing a valuable service. They provided more funding. They extended the contract with the provider, which at the time was Communicare. So it really was more of a gradual kind of extension of funding. And
Mhm.
there really wasn't a concrete moment in time when council definitively said, it's no longer a pilot, it's a permanent thing. That just is not really how this evolved. Um, that said, I know that that has been a concern for some in the community because they felt that there should be some real evaluation before you continue to keep funding something. And there is a certain amount of evaluation that does occur where Dana Bailey, who's our director of housing and social services, does keep
Mhm.
statistics on who's served and what level of service they're receiving at the respite center. But admittedly, I think the city recognizes it needs to do a better job of communicating with the neighbors. They've acknowledged that. I know one of the commitments the city had made probably back in 2018-19 was to provide regular updates and a newsletter. And I think COVID kind of derailed that a bit. And maybe one
Yeah.
newsletter went out. And after that, there wasn't regular communication from the city about the respite center. So to transition a little bit to fast forward to today, that's one of the issues I'm really trying to work on is to repair and restore the relationship with the neighbors because I continue to believe that the respite center is a really valuable community asset. I want it to be well managed and I want it to be a good neighbor. And as you know, we are currently planning to have a neighborhood meeting where the neighbors in the who surround the respite center who are impacted by things that go on, after hours or even during hours around the respite center will be able to come together and share their concerns and hopefully come up with some really good solutions for moving forward. So we're in the process of setting up those meetings now.
Mhm. And to say it's complicated is an understatement. In a meeting that you and I and Councilmember Partita and the many of the businesses had with Police Chief Pytel and his staff last summer, I learned a great deal about the impact of state legislation that had changed sentencing for possession of certain drugs, such as methamphetamines and fentanyl,
Mhm.
and how that had driven down the price, making them more widely available, and how all of that was feeding into some of the problems we've begun to see here in Davis. But you are right, and I'm not trying to hold you accountable for actions that happened while you weren't on council. But the lack of responsiveness, and it is understandable. COVID impacted us all very hard, and the lack of responsiveness was hard. So I am glad that we are beginning to plan these community engagement meetings because it's really needed. And I continue to believe that the respite center is needed, but I'm also running an organization that has experienced really significant impacts from it. So, thank you for your
Yeah.
candor on that. I appreciate that. We're in about a 20-minute interview, and there's only so far we can get here on the vast array of things that are facing the city council and the city as a whole right now. One of the things I want to make sure we touch on is the city's revenue shortfall, which is real, of great
Yes.
concern to many. Um, and so the city council decided, I believe that it was the June 16th vote, to place a 1% sales tax increase on the November ballot. Um, and that was after considering several options, such as parcel taxes and other things. And the recent history on parcel taxes in Davis didn't really go in the city's favor. So I understand the shift to a sales tax. Um, what will a 1% sales tax increase, or I'm sorry, what will it yield? And what happens if it doesn't pass?
That's the hard question. Yeah. So let's start
Yeah.
with the positive. So if it passes, and I'm very optimistic that it will pass because we will work very hard to make sure that happens, it will generate approximately $11 million a year. That's a critical amount. It's really interesting if you look at our city's financial situation, that 11 million happens to roughly correspond with the annual shortfall that we have now. And when I say shortfall, I'm talking about the gap between what we know our community would like and expects to see happening in the city in order for things to run at the level they like and at the quality they want. There's a gap right
Mhm.
now. And I think where that gap is felt most acutely is with the condition of our roads, bike paths, and some of our aging infrastructure. We hear many,
Mhm.
many complaints, legitimate complaints about the quality of the roads and the need for repaving. That 10 million is going to be incredibly helpful in terms of shoring up that, but also other things as well. Excuse me, 11 million that we would generate from the sales tax. It's not going to be used for new programs. I mean, we've heard this criticism. It's not. It's
Mhm.
really shoring up and protecting us. It's providing better quality services at the level people are hoping to have, that they want. It's not about generating new programs. And the decision to do a sales tax was a very careful one. As you mentioned, it's not only tied to the vote threshold, which means a majority vote will allow it to pass, but also a general sales tax means that it goes into the general fund and can be used to
Mhm.
provide all of the city services that we need. It's not earmarked for some particular project or purpose the way special taxes or other taxes are. Um, and so I'm very optimistic that it's going to pass. It is, in my view, it's critical, but I should mention here, it's not going to solve all of our problems. The other thing
Mhm.
that is going to really address our economic woes has to do with what I think we'll talk about in a minute, which is our new economic development director and all of her plans. So we'll get to that, I know, in just a little bit. If this sales tax measure doesn't pass, we are going to have to make some incredibly difficult decisions. When we met just about a month ago to look at our second year in our budget cycle, we made decisions where we trimmed a lot of discretionary things, just about everything you can trim short of cutting positions or city services. We cut
Mhm.
all of that back. There was very, very little left where you could trim without losing staff positions. So that's the really unfortunate place we may find ourselves in November if the sales tax measure does not pass. We may find ourselves having to reduce city staffing, which no one wants to
Yeah.
see happen.
No, of course, and we all know that the first kinds of things that tend to be cut are arts programs and parks and recreation programs and things like that. So those are some of the things that I expect would be on the chopping block. And yes, since you did mention economic development, the city recently hired Katie Yancey as the director of economic development, and I was at, or I watched a meeting a few weeks ago where she was talking about kind of what her first 8 weeks on the job had been like, getting the lay of the land, and of particular interest to me was she mentioned her desire to work with nonprofits as a part of the business community, which is sort of a new direction here in Davis. Nonprofits are sort of, often off to the side when it comes to thinking about business concerns. So that was encouraging to me. Economic development is a whole big can of worms. Let's just touch briefly on your thoughts about Ms. Yancey's work moving forward. And we don't have time to get into the general plan or the downtown plan or the housing element, but these are all things at play here in Davis. So, where do you see her work heading in, and what are you excited about?
I am so excited about her. I'm just going to tell you, I've had several meetings with her, and I'm just thrilled to have her here. I love the fact that she does her homework. She's really thorough. She gets out of her office. She's out and about everywhere, meeting folks, meeting with businesses, meeting with people downtown. She's making decisions based on the facts. She's not afraid to try new things. She comes with great background. She's really already worked on a lot of development projects, and she has this great energy and a real I can get this done kind of attitude. So I'm just thrilled to see her here. I've already had a number of meetings with her. She and I actually took a great little walking tour around the Manor neighborhood and the shopping center there and the respite center. I kind of showed her around the neighborhood, showed her what some of the issues are. She's going to do a lot of great things. She's working on a number of downtown issues related to downtown parking. She's also trying to work hard with all of our different little shopping malls that are around town to really revitalize all of them. And she's taking a really proactive approach. She's not waiting for someone to come to her and say they might want to lease space in a mall. She's reaching out. She's really proactive. She understands that we have to really show that Davis is open for business and that we are friendly to people who want to come here and stay here. So I'm just thrilled to have her here, and I think that she is going to make real progress. And I mentioned earlier the economic development piece because to me, getting our financial house in order isn't just about the sales tax measure. That's a big part of it.
Sure.
But the other companion piece is the economic development piece that she's working on. So I'm just thrilled to have her. And I think she's coming at the perfect time.
Of course, you're right. She shared some statistics recently about the rate of vacant businesses in Davis, both downtown and in the outlying, sort of strip malls versus other cities in the region. And we have a significantly higher vacancy rate for both. And so, that I think that's a really solid thing to be addressing as we move forward. And making it friendly often equates to dollars, how much are being charged for leases and how are leases increased for business holders. So I hope that's something that will be looked at as well. Donna, we're getting close to the end of our time. We've been talking a lot about challenges, and that there are many. You have a tough job. What are you counting as successes?
Oh, great question. I really feel like this year it's been a whirlwind. I've only been in office for a little over a year, but I have great colleagues on council, and I think we're making some real headway. The fact that we're actually embarking on the update to our general plan is huge. I think that's one of the most exciting things that we'll do as a city in years, and it's going to set the vision for the next decade or more. I'm so excited that we're starting that. In fact, at our meeting on Tuesday, we'll be meeting with the consultant who's going to help us with community engagement. We finally got our housing element approved by the state, which was huge, but now the hard work of actually implementing it and making sure we actually provide that housing is happening. And we're making some headway where we're seeing, housing moving up around town. And there's quite a bit going on in the downtown as well in terms of infill. So I feel like we're really starting to make progress there. And I guess I would say the other success, I feel that when I came into office, I really committed to listening to people, even if they had different views or disagreed with me. I was going to commit to really listening to people, getting out, meeting with them, getting out into the neighborhoods. And I've done that. And I feel that it's been appreciated. And I also feel like it's helped me tremendously. I feel like even though I've lived in Davis for a long time, I have a much deeper understanding now of my own community. And I feel like that's been just a great success. The way that I've worked with people, various different groups mostly throughout District 3, but certainly met with
Yeah.
others from other parts of the city as well. And so that feels like a real success.
Great. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time to speak with us today. The goal of this show is to really give people, to kind of peel back the cover and give people a peek at the work that goes into, behind the scenes at the city. So thank you for making time. You have been watching The City Considers here at Davis Media Access. I'm Autumn Labbé-Renault, and my guest today has been Donna Neville, City Council member for District 3. Thanks for tuning in. Catch the archives on YouTube.